Hi, welcome to CMMC Automation. On this channel, we share with you tips on how to automate your CMMC compliance efforts using ChatGPT to save your company considerable time and resources. My name is Derek Phillips. I am the president and founder of Aspire Cyber. We specialize in helping small defense contractors prepare for their CMMC assessments. Also, I am a certified CMMC assessor and instructor. Let's get to the content.
In this video, I'm going to show you how to use ChatGPT to automate the access control domain for a CMMC Level 2 assessment, which includes 14 domains. So this is going to be a 14-part series where we deep dive covering each domain. And for access control, there are 22 practices and 70 assessment objectives. In my previous video, I showed you how to use ChatGPT to complete a CMMC Level 1 assessment, which included 17 practices and 59 assessment objectives. But in this video series, we're going to dive a lot deeper, showing you which prompts to ask ChatGPT to get step-by-step guidance for implementation and also recommendations for products and solutions. So if you are a small defense contractor that has limited resources and does not have the cybersecurity expertise on staff, then this video is for you. If you follow the steps in this video, you will be able to save yourself thousands of dollars in consulting hours, and ultimately you'll be able to secure your sensitive data, which includes your intellectual property, and also what you're required to protect is CUI, controlled unclassified information, that you receive and or produce in the performance of your DoD contract. And for added bonus at the end, I'm going to show you how to synthesize all that information into easy, actionable steps that you can get started with implementing your information security program today. So let's have some fun. Now, if you watch my previous videos on how to use ChatGPT to complete a CMMC Level 1 assessment, you will know that the CMMC assessment guide is your Bible for CMMC. So essentially, the great thing about the CMMC assessment is it is an open book test. This assessment guide tells you exactly what evidence the assessors are going to be looking for during your CMMC Level 2 assessment to validate that you have fully implemented all of the 110 NIST SP 800-171 practices. So as you're building out your cybersecurity program, you certainly want to make sure that you're referencing the CMMC assessment guide throughout the process to make sure that the controls you are implementing, both administrative and technical, are satisfying the requirements. Now, what I'll be doing throughout the ChatGPT video is copying and pasting the practice into this ChatGPT prompt to get the recommendations, which will also cover the practices. Again, it's important to know that for each practice, you have to also be able to produce evidence showing maturity of these practices. This is what the assessors will be looking for and gathering evidence to validate during your CMMC Level 2 assessment. Okay, once you get to your ChatGPT home screen, if you don't have the ChatGPT Plus, which is the paid version, then your home screen may look a little bit different. As you can see, I do have the Plus version. And I just noticed a new feature that they have for the Plus version, which is turbo, so optimizes the speed. Let's try that out. Now, I'm not going to go through the ChatGPT basics because I have that covered on previous videos, but we always start with the prompt. We're prompting ChatGPT for information. As I mentioned on my previous videos, the more context that you give ChatGPT, the higher quality information you're going to receive. And even better, it's going to be customized to your environment, which is very important as we're trying to build out your cybersecurity program. So for these first prompts, I'm going to really be giving ChatGPT context for for our organization. I want ChatGPT to act as a cybersecurity expert that authored NIST SP 800-171 and 800-171 Alpha, which is that assessment guide. So all the advice that ChatGPT is going to give us, the suggestions, product recommendations, is going to be as if ChatGPT was the one who authored that special publication. So one pro tip is whenever you give ChatGPT a prompt, it's going to provide you just feedback. Now, for the purpose of this video and also this, so it's not as long, we can just stop generating. Whenever I'm providing ChatGPT context, I just want to feed it information about our organization. I don't need the responses, so I'm just going to stop generating. And again, this is just for whenever I'm feeding it information, just trying to give it context about my organization. So now ChatGPT knows that I wanted to act as my cybersecurity expert that authored NIST SP 800-171. Next, I want ChatGPT to know that I'm expecting step-by-step guidance on how to satisfy all of the NIST SP 800-171 practices. And this is key, the assessment objectives to achieve CMMC. Keep your responses concise and at the level that a fourth grader can understand. So that's what's really cool too about ChatGPT, where you can tell it which level you want the responses. Really basic, where someone who doesn't have cyber expertise can understand and implement the recommendations. And again, I want to stop generating because I don't need the feedback. I'm just providing ChatGPT context at this point. Within the conversation, ChatGPT is going to remember everything that I tell it. So think of ChatGPT. This is your cybersecurity consultant that you're just having a conversation with, the same type of questions you would ask a consultant if you hired Aspire Cyber, for example, to prepare you for CMMC level 2, just the questions that you would be asking me. But unlike me, ChatGPT is not going to be charging you an hourly rate. The next prompt, I want to let ChatGPT that I want the suggestions to be specific about the administrative and technical controls. And then also I want ChatGPT to recommend cost-effective solutions. We're feeding ChatGPT all of this quality context about my expectations and then also about information about my organization. So the recommendations, solutions that ChatGPT provides once I start prompting it for the practices is going to be high quality and customized to my organization. Another good reason to stop generating if you're just feeding it context, you don't need the response, is for the free version of ChatGPT, it does limit how much output that ChatGPT can provide you in a session. So you don't want to waste your output on just information you don't need. So you can always stop generating. Now in this prompt, I'm providing ChatGPT specific information about the fictional company that we're using in this example, Sparkle Tech LLC, which provides technical, supply, and logistics support services to DoD. We have a prime contract, 29 employees. Our office is located in a shared building in Dallas, Texas. Half our employees work remotely from home using the issued laptops and mobile phones. Sparkle Tech receives and creates CUI and performance of our DoD contract. So all of this context is very important for ChatGPT to know, as it provides us recommendations for solutions to satisfy the practices. And again, I'm going to stop generating. Okay, now the ChatGPT knows a little information about my company. I'm going to give it guidance on our current security controls that we have implemented, which I say is minimum. So provide me with step-by-step guidance on how to build out our security program from scratch. And in reality, a lot of small companies are starting from scratch. They may have just bare minimum security controls in place. Now they're tasked with building out a program that includes 110 practices. So that can seem pretty massive, which is why I'm breaking down this video series into domains. Now the ChatGPT has all of the context it needs to provide me high quality, customized recommendations for how to satisfy the CMMC level 2 requirements we're going to start prompting it with the practices for the access control domain. So the first one is 3.1.1. This is limiting information system access to authorized users. I'm not sure if you noticed in the previous prompt, I did tell ChatGPT to ensure that its responses are concise. So we want to keep it short and sweet, high level, and actionable. So as you can see, it's giving me the recommendations and also a list of the technical controls that I will need to implement in order to limit access control to authorized users. So we need multi-factor authentication, and as I prompted it to do, is provide me actual product recommendations. So this can save you a lot of time that you would spend researching trying to find suggested products to satisfy these practices. ChatGPT is consolidating that for you here. So Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator are some examples of tools I can use for multi-factor authentication. We're going to need role-based controls to make sure that our employees have access to only the information they require to do their job. No more, no less. And we can use Microsoft Active Directory for that. We can use the intrusion detection system. IDS is going to monitor and alert for unsuccessful access attempts. And we can use Snort or Alien Vault. And again, this list is not exhaustive, so we can always follow up with more prompts requesting additional suggestions from ChatGPT. So LastPass, Active Directory for managing passwords, BitLocker for encryption. So it's a pretty good start. And as you'll see as we go through the 22 practices for access control, a lot of these recommendations are going to overlap because that's just how the practices are set up. So for example, if you have Active Directory configured, then it's going to satisfy a lot of the practices. So I'm satisfied with the recommendations that ChatGPT provided me for 3.1.1, authorized access control. Now let's move on to the next one. Since I am using the CMMC assessment guide, you will notice that the practices are not in numerical order for some of the domains, and that's just because in the CMMC guide, it gives you the level 1 practices first, then level 2. All right, next up, we want to verify and control, limit connections to and use of external information systems. Let ChatGPT work its magic. All right, as you see, ChatGPT is recommending that we document an authentication policy. So a lot of these controls are going to require you to document policies and procedures. And that's another great thing about with using ChatGPT. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which policies and procedures you need to have in place to satisfy the practices in the access control domain. So these are and I like how ChatGPT is breaking it down in the categories. We have the administrative controls. That's typically going to be your policies and procedures. Then we have the technical controls. So you see, ChatGPT is recommending we implement a firewall, a VPN, virtual private network. Since we are allowing employees to work remotely, we should have a VPN. And that's where giving ChatGPT that context about, hey, we have employees working remotely for SparkleTech, it knows to recommend to a virtual private network for our remote employees. And it gives you recommendations for VPN solutions such as Cisco AnyConnect. We're going to need a host-based intrusion detection system. We may need a web application firewall. That's if SparkleTech has web applications. So I didn't provide ChatGPT that context, so that may or may not be applicable. Cloudflare is an example of a solution if you do have web applications. Graylog or Splunk, this is going to be our SIM tool. So far so good. ChatGPT is giving us a lot of high quality information. As I mentioned at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to synthesize all of the recommendations into an easy to follow step-by-step guide that really provides you that detailed project plan that you can get started on today. The next one is 3.1.22. So we want to control information posted or processed on publicly accessible information systems. So it's more like your company website. You want to ensure you're not posting CUI on your company website. Have a process to check for that, and then if it is identified on your website, have a process to remove it. So we're going to have a media protection policy. So just know these are just recommendations. You may not need to implement all of these controls, but this is giving you a good starting point. Next, we got 3.1.3. We want to control the flow of CUI in accordance with approved authorizations. So you're making sure you know exactly where your CUI is flowing within and outside of your organization. That's going to require a clear and comprehensive system and communication protection policy outlining how CUI is controlled. Again, we're going back to that security awareness training. We're going to see that recurring throughout a lot of these practices, because that really is the foundation of your cybersecurity program, ensuring that your employees, contractors, vendors are trained properly to protect CUI. Then we want to implement data encryption. We want to make sure we have network access control, so rogue devices or unknown devices can't access our network. We're going to have threat management, Sophos, WatchGuard. Those are some example technical controls that we can put into place. We see Graylog and Splunk again. So we're certainly going to need that SIM tool to synthesize all of the logs and alerts that we're receiving from our technical controls to act accordingly, to respond to potential incidents. Also, I invite you in the comments to share any prompts that you think would be useful in automating this process. So I'm discovering new prompts every day that really helps to maximize ChatGPT, and I'd be thrilled to hear your recommendations and add it to my list. Also, I invite you in the comments to share any prompts that you think would be useful in automating this process. So I'm discovering new prompts every day that really helps to maximize ChatGPT, and I'd be thrilled to hear your recommendations and add it to my list. Next up, 3.1.4, we need separation of duties to prevent collusion. All right, so ChatGPT is recommending that we mentioned that system and information integrity policy again. Separation of duties policy, which we can include in that information integrity policy. Awareness, then some technical controls we're going to need for role-based access control, Active Directory, we have Cisco Identity Services. All these are examples of some technical controls that you can implement to satisfy that practice and to ensure that our organization has separations of duties. And I know that's hard for smaller companies. However, you need to make the best effort to have separation of duties to satisfy this practice. And here's an example where we can ask ChatGPT a follow-up question. Why is separation of duties important? ChatGPT breaks it down, telling us exactly why separation of duties is important to your cybersecurity program, and gives you an examples, but it is a fundamental principle. And absolutely, the CMMC assessors are going to expect to see evidence of separation of duties during your assessment. Next is 3.1.5. We're employing the principle of least privilege. So we make sure that our administrators are using separate accounts for their administrative activities. Also, again, if an employee doesn't need access to CUI, you want to limit it to only the employees that need the access. So for most of the administrative controls, again, it's going to be a documented policies, procedures, standards. And as you're noticing, a lot of these technical controls are starting to overlap. Here's one for implementing privilege access management, CyberArk. This is the first time seeing this one. So another new recommendation we're seeing is file integrity monitoring system, and some recommended solutions for that one is Tripwire or SolarWinds. So essentially that's letting you know if an unauthorized person accesses a file, and in this context CUI, that they are not supposed to be accessing, then you'll receive a notification and then you can investigate. Next up, 3.1.6, we're going to use non-privileged accounts or roles when accessing non-security functions. That's what I mentioned earlier about ensuring that your administrators have a separate account for their administrative activities. They shouldn't be using an administrative account just to surf the internet or do things that does not require admin access. That is just a foundational cybersecurity best practice. So that needs to be included in your least privilege policy. And keep in mind, the name of the policy doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that you have these controls outlined in your policies. Awareness training, but some technical controls. We already saw about RBAC, Microsoft Active Directory. As you notice, Microsoft Active Directory is going to satisfy a lot of these practices. CyberArk, Beyond Trust, ForcePoint, Tripwire. Since I told ChatGPT to be concise, it's only recommending one or two product solutions. But if you wanted to expound on those recommendations, you can always just say recommend additional solutions. So, for example, I'm going to say recommend additional file integrity monitoring solutions. And now it's going into a little more detail about the recommended solutions that you can use for file integrity monitoring. And look at that. So far, you saved thousands of dollars in consulting fees by using ChatGPT to walk you through this process. Next practice is 3.1.7. So we want to prevent non-privileged users from executing privileged functions. Administrative controls are going to be our policies and procedures. Tell us exactly what verbiage should be included in our policies and procedures. With those technical controls, we're seeing a lot of overlap with the recommendations, which is fine. We're going to synthesize that at the end. This one, DLP solution, semantic, ForcePoint. So what the data loss prevention tool is going to do is you're going to have your CUI tag, and say, for example, an employee tries to email the CUI to their Gmail or something like that, something that's unauthorized, is documented in your policies, then that data loss prevention system would block that from happening. It would prevent it. So that is an invaluable solution to have to ensure that your CUI is protected at all times. 3.1.8. Next, we have 3.1.8. We want to limit unsuccessful login attempts. ChatGPT, how can we do that? Okay, there you have it. We're going to have an account lockout policy. That's something that Microsoft Active Directory can accomplish. We're going to need two-factor authentication. And here we're getting more information about the system information and event management tool, your SIM system. So QRadar, Splunk, IBM. Those are just some recommendations. So let's find out more. That SIM tool is going to be extremely important because with all of the devices you're going to have on your network, the security tools, your antivirus, etc., it's going to be producing a lot of logs and alerts, and you're going to need that SIM tool to essentially consolidate all that information, synthesize it into a format that you can easily understand and act upon. That's the most important thing. You need to be able to take action when you're getting those critical alerts. So it provides that real-time monitoring, log management, event correlation. That is really the key. You need to correlate all those events to know, okay, is this a false alarm or is this something that I need to take action on? It provides you that threat intelligence and reporting and compliance. You're absolutely going to need to demonstrate during your CMMC level 2 assessment that you have the ability to accomplish all of these activities. And the SIM tool is going to be your best option to accomplish that. Next, we have 3.1.9. We want to make sure that we have privacy policy and security notices consistent with applicable CUI rules. So every time someone in your company accesses a system that has CUI, you need to have a notice prior to them logging in, for example, into their computer that has CUI or has access to CUI. They need to have a privacy notice or just notifying them that CUI is contained on that device. That is a requirement for CMMC level 2. Some of those technical controls are going to do that. Again, Active Directory can do it. So a good follow-up question here may be, what verbiage should be included in the notice? And ChatGPT is giving you some suggestions on at least what should be covered in that security notice. So it gives you a starting point for creating that notice on your systems. Let's go a step further. Create a sample notice and say, sure, here we go. Now, this is another example of just the magic of GPT. So instead of having to start from scratch to figure out what to include in your security notice, ChatGPT is going to give you a sample, and that's a good starting point for you. You can customize it from there. Gotta love it. 3.1.10, want to make sure we have session lock and pattern hiding. So once your computer system times out, say after 15 minutes, then you want to ensure that whatever was previously viewable is no longer viewable whenever the screen is locked. So we have our administration controls, the policies, and then as far as technical controls, want to make sure we have a session lock that's automatic after a period of inactivity. Make sure that pattern hiding displays. So we can use a screen guard. Again, we're configuring devices to automatically lock. So that practice is pretty straightforward. 3.1.11, we want to terminate automatically a user session after defined condition. So that control kind of overlaps with the previous one. Okay, we have our Windows group policy, Apple configuration profile, and I like that ChatGPT is giving us examples for both Windows and MacBook. 3.1.12, we want to monitor and control remote access sessions. So you see the theme, yeah, these administrative controls are going to be your policies and procedures. But for the technical, we're going to need, talking about our VPN solution, that's going to have the capability of monitoring remote access sessions. Our SIM2 remote desktop. So this one, if we're using VPN, we're going to satisfy this control by being able to monitor and control remote access sessions, which is imperative, especially if you have employees working remotely. You need to know who's accessing your systems, from where, when, and how. For 3.1.13, we want to employ cryptographic mechanisms. So this is where we're starting to employ our encryption, ensuring that CUI is encrypted. So even if it does end up in the hands of someone that's unauthorized to have it, they can't do anything with it because it's properly encrypted. So with encryption, you want to ensure that you're managing the encryption keys properly as well. So it's giving us some examples of some encryption algorithms we can use: AES, SSL, PKI, for certificates. Again, anytime you need additional information, you'll just prompt ChatGPT with follow-up questions. 3.1.14, this is going to be route remote access via managed access control points. And again, this one's going to overlap because if you're using a VPN solution, it's going to satisfy this control and corresponding assessment objectives. Keep in mind, for VPN and encryption that you're using for CUI, it needs to be FIPS-140-2 validated encryption solution for CUI. That's very important to make sure that the solution you're using is FIPS-140-2 validated. For that reason, I'm going to ask ChatGPT a follow-up question and recommend FIPS 140-2 validated solutions. And it's about to give me a list of FIPS 140-2 validated solutions. Keeping in mind with ChatGPT, since it doesn't have access to real information, such as the internet, then you need to always double check its recommendations before you make a purchase decision. But it's really just a good starting point for you. So we got Cisco AnyConnect, OpenSSL, BitLocker. These are just some examples of some FIPS 140-2 validated solutions that will satisfy the requirement to encrypt CUI. 3.1.15, this is remote execution of privileged commands. So this is something you certainly want to limit. And it's going to start off by, in your policies and procedures, outlining what's authorized in terms of executing privileged commands remotely. Then your SIM tool is going to be able to tell you, okay, when someone is executing administrative commands. 3.1.16, we want to ensure that we authorize wireless access prior to allowing such connections. Again, you don't want unknown or rogue devices accessing your wireless network, because it can do a lot of bad things and breach your network. Definitely going to have our policy. Then we're going to ensure that we're using secure wireless protocols such as WPA2. We can do MAC address filtering, where we can limit access to certain devices. There's some examples, some Cisco wireless IP, Aruba. Those are just secure wireless access points. So in your corporate office, if you have Wi-Fi, or even in your home office, you just want to make sure that you control access to your wireless network, especially if that's the network you're using to access CUI. 3.1.17, again, protect wireless access using authentication and encryption. A lot of these controls are going to overlap, as I've previously said, but there's a method to my madness you'll see at the end where I synthesize all this information into your project plan. It'll all make sense. There goes that WPA2 again, so just that wireless protocol. EAP, TLS, Aruba ClearPass. Just some recommendation for technical controls. Again, you don't have to implement all of these technical controls. It's just a lot of them going to overlap, and then a lot of them will do the same thing, but you just want to have this good starting point of recommendations. 3.1.18, we want to control connection of mobile devices. This is our first time seeing a recommendation for mobile device management system. This is something certainly want to use if you have employees using especially like cell phones to access their email, which may contain CUI or other systems. Want to be able to make sure you're managing those mobile devices, which is why I would recommend is making sure that it's a company-owned device versus BYOD, their personal phones or computers to do their work, because it's much harder to control their personal devices. You can run into privacy issues, and there's a lot of headaches related to trying to control employees' personal devices. So it's just a best practice to make sure that you're issuing your employees work laptops and phones. 3.1.19, want to ensure that we're encrypting CUI on mobile devices and mobile computing platforms. So if there is CUI on those mobile devices, laptops, phones, you want to make sure that's encrypted, and that mobile device management solution can ensure of that. But yeah, you need to use that FIPS validated encryption anywhere that CUI is stored, processed, or transmitted. You want to see both at rest and in transit that CUI needs to be encrypted. And remember, FIPS 140-2 validated encryption is the key. So some examples: Microsoft BitLocker. The last practice for access control, 3.1.21, want to make sure we limit the use of portable storage devices on external networks. So your USB drives, external hard drives, any type of device where we could store CUI and transport that device. Want to make sure you have strong controls around it. It's good best practice to not just to prohibit the use of external storage devices, because they're pretty hard to track. Yeah, you just can't afford that CUI getting into the wrong hands. But if you do permit it, you want to make sure that those devices are tracked. You know who's the owner, who has it at all times, and then also that it's encrypted using FIPS 140-2 validated encryption. But one way, if you're going to prohibit the use of external storage devices, you can disable USB ports. So here's an example of a good follow-up question. How do I disable, can't spell, USB ports? So as you can see, ChatGPT is going to give you step-by-step guidance on how to disable USB ports on your Windows computers. If I have a MacBook, then I would just ask a follow-up question: how do I do it on MacBook? Okay, we're going through all 22 practices for the access control domain. Y'all made it. And as I promised, I'm going to show you how to consolidate all this information, synthesize it into a format that you can easily follow and execute on your project plan, so that you can satisfy the access control domain for a CMMC level 2 assessment. So I'm telling ChatGPT to in a chart format to summarize the recommended products and map them to practices that they satisfy. This is super cool. I just discovered this prompt yesterday as far as having the output into a chart format. This is super cool because you see how the practice is clearly mapped to the recommended product. So all those products that ChatGPT recommended in the previous prompts, now it's all consolidated into this easy to read, clear chart. That is super cool. Will save you so much time and money by having this information. Such a good starting point. And again, you don't need to implement all of these technical solutions. You're just going to identify the one that works best for your organization, that's within your budget, and also that you have the expertise on staff to maintain, and you'll go from there. But this is such a cool feature of ChatGPT. Gotta love it. And if you like this video, I'm gonna give you a special bonus prop. Here we go. So in chart format, we want to summarize the administrative controls as well that ChatGPT recommended. So we have the technical controls mapped into a chart. Let's see the administrative, so we can see which policies and procedures we need to ensure that we have documented. And again, it doesn't matter the name of the policy. You just want to make sure that you have the verbiage that ChatGPT is recommending for that policy. There you have it. Have a chart mapping the practice to the recommended policy. Super cool. And of course, you can use ChatGPT to automate the process of writing these policies for you. And I can't tell you how much money that will save you as an organization. So Aspire Cyber, that is one of the things we do, is write policies and procedures for our clients, and it's not cheap to do so. But ChatGPT can save you a lot of money to do it for you. Okay, so now that we have our chart, we have this information consolidated for us. The last bonus prompt I'm going to give you, again, go ahead and make sure you like this video. Give me any comments. Let me know if it was valuable for you. And also recommend other videos or topics you would like me to cover with ChatGPT or any cybersecurity compliance videos I'll be happy to make for you. Okay, since you've been such a great audience, I'm going to leave you one more bonus prompt for the road. And so I want to consolidate the administrative and technical recommendations and solutions to a project plan that includes an estimated time to implement. Let's see what ChatGPT can come up with. Now we have our charts. Now let's see if it can give us a project plan. Holy cow. This is super cool. So now we have the controls mapped to the solutions and an estimated time to implement. Isn't that remarkable? So that gives you an idea, okay, where you need to start, what type of resources you need to commit to implement these controls to satisfy the CMMC level 2 access control domain. Wow. Okay, so I hope you got a lot of value from that video. Again, this is going to be a 14-part series where I'm going to do a deep dive like that for all of the CMMC level 2 14 domains. We have 13 to go. As we progress through the domains, I'm sure we're going to continue to discover added bonuses and just capabilities of ChatGPT and just prompts that we can use to really maximize its capabilities. So I certainly hope you follow me throughout the journey, because by the end of these 14 domains, you're going to have a good grasp of what's required to satisfy the CMMC level 2 practices. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and I invite you to, in the comments, just let me know what you liked about the video, how I can improve it.
Thanks for watching CMMC Automation. I hope that you got a lot of value from today's video and you use ChatGPT to automate your CMMC efforts. It's going to save your company a lot of time and money. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me at Aspire Cyber. Also, you can leave your questions in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe because it helps out this channel immensely. I really appreciate it, and good luck to you on your CMMC journey.